I'm betting that exactly none of you have heard of Court of Lonely Royals, a 2006 drama from Melbourne. This, Avatar, Cyber Wars, and Gora, a space movie, are probably the most obscure films I've ever reviewed. And like Avatar, Court of Lonely Royals is absolute shit. The film is set in a dystopian near-future Melbourne where Holden and Hunter work as police-sanctioned assassins but want to get out of the business. They each find a partner, and all four of them eventually confront each other in the climax. If that summary sounds rather dry, it's because Court of Lonely Royals is an incredibly boring movie. After a promising, disturbing intro in which a cop kills a shoplifter, this film goes downhill almost immediately. Almost nothing in Court of Lonely Royals is any good. None of the characters feel or behave convincingly in any way, and 3 out of the 4 main characters are somehow both bland and annoying. Not Holden, though, as he's just bland. The Adelaide Film Festival observed shades of Bret Easton Ellis in this film, but even if this is a perverse satire of the police force and malcontent youth culture, the subtext of life being so trivialized in this future city that Generation Y has turned to murder and prostitution is so thin that it's barely there, and none of the characters are remotely likable or interesting. The acting is extremely poor, except from Samantha Noble, who throws herself into her role as Hooker Charlie. The dialogue is corny, and the pacing is awful. Most of the film is just banal dialogue punctuated by a few somewhat interesting kills. It takes far too long for the plot to get moving. Holden and his girlfriend Camilla make no effort to evade their pursuers, which makes it obvious how the screenwriter is just stalling with them until he can think of something to do with them, and the ending has the film stumble to a close with no real progress being made. Court of Lonely Royals' aforementioned satirical angle fails for several reasons in addition to the flimsy subtext. The film's time frame is never specified, and it looks and feels like right now, so the world of this film is both too mundane and too outlandish, with the carefree murder contracts and the grinning evil cop who loves milkshakes to be plausible. A friend of Holden suggests that they expose Melbourne's wide use of contract killers on television, but Holden dismisses the idea, alluding to how easily the government can make people disappear. But this makes you wonder why this huge human rights violation isn't more widely known, making the future setting feel even less credible. American Psycho, if I could refer back to Ellis for a moment, satirizes yuppie culture in Wall Street, as vanity, greed, and conspicuous consumption were prevalent in corporate circles during the 1980s, and shows how such spiritual emptiness might lead a man like Patrick Bateman to become a serial killer. The Dark Knight Returns, if you'll believe it, also does social commentary and satire far better than Court of Lonely Royals. Growing up in a town frequently threatened by supervillains, it makes sense for the rebellious, resentful youth of Gotham to respond to this context by emulating supervillainy, with its costumes and over-the-top theatricality, in their gang the Mutants. As such, The Dark Knight Returns addresses in numerous ways the issue of Batman creating his own villains. Even A Clockwork Orange does dark satire better, and I don't even like that movie. A Clockwork Orange glamorizes Alex's ultra-violent life with copious irony, to the point of corniness, I thought, and also comments on draconian forms of law enforcement and psychological rehabilitation. This serves a moral of it being preferable to choose to be good or evil than to be blindly conditioned toward good. But Court of Lonely Royals seems to lack anything relevant to say or comment on. It shows that young adults can be sullen and jaded about the world, with murder and prostitution being an extension of this melancholy, but this is too generic a viewpoint to base a movie around, as mopey teenagers are a constant factor pretty much anywhere in the world. And of course, the characters are terrible. You may think that it's trying to satirize police corruption through exaggeration, but it's not making any kind of point or statement other than police can be corrupt. Even with this weak angle, there are other places, such as China or Russia, places not known for their civil liberties, low crime rate, or lenient law enforcement, where the film's premise would have been better suited. Court of Lonely Royals isn't as clever or as artistic as it thinks it is. There is some good camera work here and there, but much of the film contains garish, pointless color-tinted visuals and an irritating soundtrack full of screeching repetition. Now, I actually liked the color-tinted visuals in Battlefield Earth, and also John Travolta as Turl, as the human areas have a brown and green color scheme, and the Cyclo areas a blue and purple color scheme, thus reinforcing the contrast between invaded and invader. Sure, it wasn't necessary, but Battlefield Earth's visuals had a thematic effect. But in Court of Lonely Royals, the color-tinted visuals are pointless and irritating.
Someone tell me who thought this would be a good idea.
Court of Lonely Royals is fucking awful. It's one of the worst movies I've seen in a long time and earns 1.5 stars out of 5. Thanks for watching. Cheers.